One total participation technique, or TPT as they are known, that can make our students more active learners is picture notes. Picture notes are when students draw out the concepts learned during pause points within the lesson. However, picture notes are not meant to replace written notes but to accompany them. Picture notes are effective because the student must understand the concept or concepts presented and then be able to transform them into a different medium like illustrations. After the pause point, the student should share in small groups or pairs. This step is crucial because students can fill in the gaps of understanding they may have in a low-stakes setting. Also, it refreshingly places the students in the role of the teacher, and the teacher as a facilitator rather than an instructor. Be sure your students understand that their drawing skills are not important. Rather, their mastery of learned concepts is what matters. The pause points and sharing time add to a student's understanding of the big picture of the lesson, which will be drawn in a final box. Here's an example of how it might play out in a regular classroom. First, select pause points during your lesson. This is when students will stop, process what they just learned, and then draw out the concepts. Let's say I'm teaching about the First, Second, and Third Amendment of the Bill of Rights. I would place a picture pause after I define and explain the First Amendment, then another after I finish talking about the Second Amendment, and another after I talk about the Third Amendment. Finally, I would plan out a pause for the students to draw out the big picture of the lesson. Then, have your students share their pictures with a peer or small group. During this portion, have your students record any questions that may come up that need to be addressed. As a teacher, use this time to walk around the room and get a grasp of the students' comprehension of the concepts. The pause points and sharing should be around 4 minutes, although the time limits are to your discretion. Next, address any questions that popped up during the sharing portion as a class. If one student is confused on a particular aspect, then it is probable that another student is also confused. Near the end, have students illustrate a final drawing of the big picture from the lesson, along with a summary statement below the picture. Finally, you can choose to have your students share their big pictures amongst themselves, or you can have the students submit their drawing to you. The subsequent lesson can point out the similarities, differences, and surprises from the illustrations. Here are some final thoughts on picture notes. These notes can be drawn on a worksheet or in the student's notebook. It just depends on the resources available and how you would like your students to complete this activity. Also, when preparing a lesson interwoven with picture notes, test it out yourself. Ask yourself these questions. Can you break a lesson down into 2 or 3 parts? Can these parts be illustrated? What is the overall big picture of the lesson? Don't forget to bring your drawings to the class so that the students can see how you visualize the lesson in comparison to their own. Finally, as an educator, we must remember that lessons do not have to be limited to the traditional pen and paper notes of the past. Our lessons should be as diverse and interesting as our students.